John Wesley Harding is quickly becoming my favorite Dylan album. From the tracks I've heard so far, the songs have this strange hypnotic quality to the music and the lyrics, and I think it gets a balance between the early folk surrealist Dylan and the better melodies of his later records. Apparently also this track that I'm reviewing on this video led to the inspiration for Judas Priest, the band's name. They take inspiration from this track, and it's a track that's been sent in by one of you guys, by Peter. So here we go, let's hear the song. This is The Ballad of Frankie Lee and Judas Priest by Bob Dylan. Bass, acoustic guitar, bit of drums.
Well, Frankie Lee and Judas Priest, they were the best of friends. So when Frankie Lee needed money one day, Judas quickly pulled out a roll of tens and placed them on a footstool just above the plotted plain, saying, "Take your pick, Frankie boy, my loss will be your gain." Well, Frankie Lee, he sat right down and put his fingers to his chin. But with the cold eyes of Judas on him, his head began to spin. "Could you please not stare at me like that?" he said. "It's just my foolish pride. But sometimes a man must be alone, and this is no place to hide."
Okay, this is one of the things about Dylan records, especially in this period. I think it takes all of your attention, which is cool. I don't think a lot of music does that to you. It kind of commands your attention. So we've got a tale here, two characters so far, and a narrator. Frankie Lee, who seems to be sort of like a boy, is what I'm kind of getting. Someone maybe hard on his luck, maybe a homeless boy. And then Judas Priest, which I think is an interesting name. Obviously, Judas, the biblical reference, is the betrayer of Jesus. And the idea that he's a priest, maybe he's talking about the church here. Regardless, Frankie's hard on his luck, and Judas Priest offers him money and then seems to judge him afterwards. "Could you stop staring at me like that? It's just my foolish pride." So I don't know, maybe he's talking about the church here, the church's judgment on people. Maybe, I don't know. Let's keep this rolling.
Well, Judas, he just winked and said, "All right, I'll leave you here. But you better hurry up and choose which of those bills you want before they all disappear. I'm gonna start my picking right now. Just tell me where you'll be." Judas pointed down the road and said, "Eternity." "Eternity," said Frankie Lee, with a voice as cold as ice. "That's right," said Judas, "eternity, though you might call it paradise." "I don't call it anything," said Frankie Lee with a smile. "All right," said Judas Priest, "I'll see you after a while."
Really like this style of storytelling. It's a very folky style, right? I found it quite difficult at first to get into this style of Dylan, where his words fall quite interestingly on the beat. It's kind of off the beat, but he's doing it in an interesting way where the music kind of just sets as a background and he tells the tale over the top of it. Now, where are we in the story? So after the first two verses where Judas helps him out, Frankie Lee wants to be left alone, and then Judas kind of tells him to get your shit together, right? And then because one of those bills, choose which one of those bills you want before they all disappear. And then he goes, "Kind of leave me alone." And then he asks him where he's going to be. And Judas says, "You'll find me in eternity, in paradise." So at this point, Frankie and Judas have an interesting relationship where he's very dependent on Judas for guidance, yet while getting the sort of judgment of him at the same time. Interesting sort of relationship between the two of them.
Well, Frankie Lee, he sat back down, feeling low and mean, when just then a passing stranger burst upon the scene, saying, "Are you Frankie Lee, the gambler, whose father's deceased? Well, if you are, there's a fella calling you down the road, and they say his name is Priest." "Oh yes, he is my friend," said Frankie Lee in fright. "I do recall him very well. fact, he just left my saves. Yes, that's the one, said the stranger, as quiet as a mouse. Well, my message is he's down the road, stranded in a house.
Tables have turned. Judas just leaves Frankie, goes down the road and starts kind of, I guess, crying wolf, I think is what's happening. This new person comes up to Frankie. It does turn out Frankie is a young man who's lost his father, has fallen on his luck. He's a gambling addict. And now apparently Judas is calling Frankie to come and help him. Interesting.
Well, Frankie Lee, he panicked. He dropped everything and ran until he came onto the spot where Judas Priest did stand. What kind of house is this, he said, where I have come to roam? It's not a house, says Judas Priest. It's not a house, it's a home. Well, Frankie Lee, he trembled. He soon lost all control over everything which he had made while the mission bells did toll. He just stood there staring at that big house as bright as any sun, with 24 windows and a woman's face in every one.
Okay, so you try and take away from the surface level story is being told. What's the kind of theme that's playing out or being played out or being suggested maybe by Dylan? Is this what I thought in the beginning, maybe a kind of ripping apart of religion that I've seen happen in this period of time with Dylan before he finds God, essentially in that next period that comes in like mid-70s. So he's trying to suggest that the Judas Priest guy is kind of crying wolf, suggesting he needs his help. He needs help, like maybe the church does to poor people, to get that. I think it's called tithing, right? Where you pay them a certain amount of money when you go to church. Because when he gets to the house, he realizes a giant one with all these beautiful windows. So it's a really pretty house, yet he's asking for more.
Well, up the stairs ran Frankie Lee with a soulful bounding leap, and foaming at the mouth, he began to make his midnight creep. For 16 nights and days he raved, but on the 17th he burst into the arms of Judas Priest, which is where he died of thirst. No one tried to say a thing when they carried him out in jest, except of course the little neighbor boy who carried him to rest. And he just walked along alone with his guilt so well concealed, and muttered underneath his breath, nothing is revealed.
Okay, very interesting twist. It seems like his addictions get the better of him. Frankie Lee with a soulful bounding leap and a foaming at the mouth. So this is like the sort of issues of an addict, right? A person who's foaming at the mouth, whatever their addiction is. I guess in this case it was alcohol. For 16 nights and days he raved. So he let into his addictions. But on the 17th he burst into arms of Judas Priest, which is where he died of thirst. I don't think he actually means thirst, but whatever addictions were plaguing him gets to him eventually. And then the idea of the judgment comes up again, except of course, he says, no one tried to say a thing when they carried him out in jest. They carried him out in jest, except for the boy who seemed to be sincere, the neighbor boy who carried him to rest. Quite a sweet little couplet there. Interesting. Let's see how this thing ends and resolves itself.
The story,
okay, he's gonna tell us.
The moral of this song is simply that one should never be where one does not belong. So when you see your neighbor carrying something, help him with his load, and don't go mistaking paradise for that home across the road.
I hope you guys can sort of understand how difficult it is to kind of grasp a track like this on your first listen, because there's so much to kind of take away from it. I think it's a track about the human condition. I think takes a look at a bunch of different things. Addiction, dependencies, the idea of the grass not being greener on the other side, because Judas Priest said in eternity in paradise, and then he follows him to this place which is supposedly paradise, Judas Priest's house, and it's not. His issues still followed him there. He eventually dies in that place due to his addictions. And then the moral of the story at the end, as Dylan puts it, is that when you see your neighbor carrying something, help him with his load. You know, the idea, the golden sort of idea in Christianity is, you know, the idea of like, help thy neighbor, do unto others as you would do unto yourself, is what I think was he was alluding to at the end, especially the idea of the neighbor boy who carried him to rest, the only person who maybe saw the issues at hand. Really interesting track. I wonder what I would feel to take away from like the 10th listen, and I guess I'll ask you guys for that, because I'm sure most of you guys are on your 50th, 60th listen of this lesson, which is, I think, fitting. What are the lessons you took away from the track? What do you think the song is about? Because it's maybe about the relationship between the poor and the church, maybe, is what I kind of took away. Really interesting song, very, very interesting, a lot to think about. Cool track, man.